there was definitely a correlation between people who said they use AI regularly and them saying that I'm confident in my abilities to use AI. And I would say that's dangerous.
Day, GTMAI, podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K. Tune in now, don't delay. Catch the future on display. In a world of tech.
Welcome, everyone. This is the GTMAI podcast. And my name is Jonathan Carford, aka Coach K. I am excited because today I was on a guest on his podcast on the Futurecraft GTM podcast with Ken and his partner in crime. And I have the pleasure of being able to return the favor and have him on as my guest, Ken Roden. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here to talk about AI.
Yeah, man. I love your background. So you came from the ops and AI strategy, you did that Infor, obviously you do the podcast, you do a lot with marketing. You're currently doing your doctorate at Temple, right? University. So you've done some consulting in the past. So you have a really cool background from both the ops perspective and then just from marketing, which I don't see that happen a lot because usually like just marketing or just ops, but you definitely have the crossover of both, So I think you have a really unique lens that most people don't have, which is going to be talked about in your analysis today, which I'm super excited about. But before we get into all the details of your doctorate and the research you're going to share, which I'm like super excited to hear about, I want to know you. Tell the audience about you. How'd you kind of get into this AI world? Because you, like I said, you did AI stuff at Infor, which was a couple of years ago. So you're kind of one of the first people there. Tell me about you, what your background is, and how come you do what you do now.
Yeah, for sure. Jonathan, as you mentioned, like I started as a marketer, and then as time progressed, I actually started working more on, how do you do operational go-to-market shifts, and got into leadership and moved around, got to work at some really cool companies, do some interesting things. And when ChatGPT came out, I was like, holy smokes, like work is going to change. And so that actually stemmed my doctoral work and my focus on how go-to-market specifically was going to change. And one of the big reasons I started the podcast and I'm doing this is I'm really big on community. I believe that, AI can actually democratize work for people and create opportunities for people that they wouldn't have before. So it's really important that we understand how to best leverage it, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today.
Totally agree, man. And you tell me about the podcast. And I want to make sure I'll make sure we tag it, but tell me more about the podcast. Cause like you guys do a really good job with the interviews. So I want to make sure we pitch that too, because people would love it. If they like this podcast, they'll like yours.
Yeah. Thanks. So Futurecraft Go-to-Market is all about talking to practitioners and people who are diving headfirst into AI, learning about it, sharing their messy experiences. So we talk to experts who, like Jonathan, who have joined us, shared what they're seeing in talking to conversations with customers, as well as actually using tools and sharing what's working for them and what isn't. Because again, we want to democratize AI for go-to-market professionals specifically, because that seems to be the group that's being affected the most. And specifically, we want to teach executives and leaders about what's happening in AI, because it's hard to be doing all the stuff that's happening. So we want to give you a bird's eye view on all the things.
I love it. That's literally what we do at the academy, or with the podcast, I should say, is just we come from different angles. And I'm the kind of person, I'm like, I want more voices. I don't want less. I want more people talking about it, So I love what you're doing. Let's get into it. So you're doing your doctorate. Tell me about the thesis, your hypothesis, what you kind of the background. Let's dive into the data.
Yeah. So the idea around the doctorate is I'm still in the doctorate right now. So I just completed my first study, but the focus is around how leadership is going to change in the world of AI, because we've all seen how the internet changed and how that changed work. And we're seeing how work could change with AI, how ChatGPT is changing marketing, or these great industry or subject matter expert tools are changing sales enablement or solution consulting. It's going to change leadership. And so my doctorate is all around understanding how that's going to happen. But to start, what I did was actually talk to employees and professionals about their views on AI at work. And I found three interesting things. One, probably not very surprising to you and your audience, but 93% of white collar professionals in the US said they're using AI. That's actually more than what's being reported by some of the big guys. And I'm not to say that they're wrong, but you're probably guessing at this point, 80% plus of your employees are using AI. That's probably a safe bet, but that's significantly higher than what leaders think the AI adoption is. They're reporting somewhere around 30%. So there's a huge gap. The other gap, which I think is really interesting and powerful for your audience, for leaders, is that if you are using AI at work as a professional, most people do not have trust in their leadership's vision for how AI is going to be used. And that's really startling because all of the data right now out there, all of the headlines you're seeing in the New York Times are saying AI pilots are failing across the board. I think I saw something like
Yeah.
95% of AI pilots.
MIT just came out with it, which is, anyways, I have a lot of issues with a lot of MIT stuff lately, but that's okay. Keep going.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and you're spot on. So this headline came out and it's, wait a minute, you and I are kind of in the trenches. We're talking to people adopting AI. So maybe these pilots are failing, but like the reason they're failing is not why we think it is. It's not because the employees are necessarily resisting it or they're not using it or they don't want to use it. A lot of it is because they don't trust how their employers, their leaders are implementing it. That's actually the crux that I'm uncovering.
Do you feel like I'm gonna back up a second. So in your stuff, because I know like in order to have statistical significance, as my data guy would say, you have
Yeah.
to have a certain level and threshold. So tell me more about the people, like how many people was it? And then was it across different sizes, different industries? Tell me more about the descriptive data.
Yeah. So what I did was I did a survey with 200 respondents, which is statistically significant, and only am reporting on things that have an R over 0.79, which is statistically significant. Anything over
Yeah,
like,
yeah. For people that don't know what that means, it's good.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going with high confidence. What was
yeah.
really interesting though was demographic information that I collected showed no real variance in perceptions of AI. The one thing to note is there is some demographic differences around adoption of AI. Men are more likely to adopt AI right now than women to use it. That wasn't part of the study, so it's not relevant. But like the
Yeah,
demographics are such as saying these are the perceptions of Americans right now using AI.
that's awesome. So in your, what was the surprising things you found, like from the data? I mean, besides obviously the gap between how many actually using versus what people think are using it, what else was surprising?
I got to be honest, when I started this to think about putting the survey together, I thought the reason why AI adoption was going to struggle was because of job insecurity. I really did think that, when you're talking to marketers specifically, they're like, I don't want to lose my job. Like especially content marketers, product marketers, it's something you hear them say, but the data actually shows that's not what the issue is.
Yeah.
The other thing, which was pretty interesting, is the confidence level in AI. So the more you use AI, asking someone how frequently they use it correlates pretty much one-to-one to their confidence level. So we got a lot of highly confident people in AI. That's good news on the surface, but because AI is changing so quickly, I would say that no one's really an expert right now in AI. So we probably have a little bit of a knowledge gap and
Yeah.
a perception gap about what we know. So those were two really insightful things. And what is relevant to your audience and to leaders is when you're thinking about implementing AI, you might have a team that says, hey, yeah, we know how to use this stuff. And you got to be like, no, we got to teach you how to use it the way that we're using it at this company or this that aligns with this strategy. So they're not off doing different things. And that matters, especially if I think about like marketing or go to market with like brand voice, tone, consistency in messaging, using it for outbound. There's a way and a mechanism to do this. So it's really important that your team's aligned. And, going back to that first point, understanding your vision as the leader for how you want AI implemented at your division, company, team.
Yeah, there's this whole thing is fascinating. Like I've been doing a lot of training for with leaders. Like I come from both angles of like the bottoms up, teaching people how to use it, and then going from the top down and saying, okay, what's the strategy overall? And I feel like there's a way to kind of do from both sides and compress the problem from both sides because they're hungry for ways they can become better and give them the ability to try things and experiment and to
Yeah.
find the little things that takes time off. It's fascinating to see that. But at the same time, one salesperson can't they can show how do I say this without offending anyone? Like one salesperson does not have the level of view of the problems of the organization, so they can't solve them. They can see the view of their own, which could expand, but at some point that expansion gets stuck. So it has to you have to have a higher view of a leader of saying we have this larger problem that's connected to revenue. We need to figure out from a workflow process or automation, or whatever the case might be. But I think both are very powerful. What do you see?
I agree with you. So this is not where you want people super repping. This is not the time for that. But where you do want them is actually part of the process. There was a study recently done in Sweden that covered that talked about how when employees who were on the ground, on the floor, so like a salesperson, was part
Huh?
of the implementation, the team overall was more likely to adopt and feel confident in the process. So you might not be able
Yeah.
to say, hey, salesperson, they create the process and then they're going to implement it or try to get the rest of the team doing it. But if they're part of building it with that top down view and you're able to build up as well, you're going to be more successful in adoption. So bring people along is a great lesson that you hit on. Bring them along. They want to be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a random question going back to something you said before about people using AI. So, and I don't know if you did this study on your research, but I'm just curious. There was another education AI company. I can't remember the name. I think it was Signals. Anyways, they did this thing where they were researching prompting specifically. And they had everyone take the survey. And part of the survey was to submit a prompt, like saying, give us your most advanced prompt you got. And they came to find out that people who were confident and thought of themselves as experts were submitting mediocre prompts.
Hmm.
And it turns out that like people who like drive cars every day think they're good. I'm like, and I tell people this all the time, just because you drive a car every day doesn't mean that you're a NASCAR driver. It's not the
Yeah.
same, you know? And it's the same thing with prompting. Just because you use prompting every day and you use a 2 sentence prompt and you're literally doing it every day, that's great. And I love it. No diss against you, but that doesn't mean you're an advanced prompter, you know? And not that you even need to be, because sometimes it's like you don't need to be advanced prompting all the time. But I feel like that people don't know what they don't know. And this is a long way to ask my question. But the point is saying, do you find a disparity between what people think they are because they think they're more advanced, but it's also because they have no other measure to measure themselves against to know where they're at? Because there is none that exists. You see that?
Yeah. You bring up a really powerful point. Yes, this came up. There was definitely a correlation between people who said they use AI regularly and them saying that I'm confident in my abilities to use AI. And I would say that's dangerous because to your point exactly, you might think you're good at this, but you're actually maybe not as good as you think. Or even if you are super good, it might not be what your company needs. So as a leader, I think talking to your teams about calibrating that and aligning on, in your example, what good prompt creation looks like is really important so that you do have a
Yeah.
quality bar set because there is a huge gap. And then there's a ton of people who don't feel confident at all. So it helps everybody.
Yeah, I think the challenge is like I said, with anything, whether it's automations or whether it's AI agents or whatever in AI, like people don't know what advanced looks like. And you'll see like the NAN stuff from make, templates being thrown around LinkedIn and people saying, use this thing. And very few people can actually take that thing, download it, and actually use it because they don't understand the system enough to know how to make it work, but it looks cool. So,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes back to the momentum. I told you about it before. Momentum, we did this research on how many people are actually using it operationally, and it's 7% out of 1,000 people, which is crazy. So it's just crazy to think how much is not happening, but it's also because people are doing the best they can with what they have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so let me ask you this then. From your research, where do you think like you have an organization, they hear about all this AI stuff all the time, and they're thinking, okay, Ken, cool. There's research showing we should do this stuff. What the bleep should I be doing? Where do I even start? What do you tell them? What's the suggestion?
Yeah. So based off the research, that I've done, as well as talking to leaders who are successfully implementing AI into their organizations, which isn't a lot right now. They're taking what I'm calling the AI sandwich model, which is layering human intelligence at the start and the end with AI workflows spread out throughout the process. And the reason why that's important is for two reasons. One, it brings the team along for the journey. And two, it doesn't blow up the process and most companies aren't ready to do that. And it's really important because, Jonathan, we talked about this before, but like
Yeah.
most companies aren't ready to blow up everything, but their teams need to get comfortable with using
Yeah.
AI. And as they're diving into AI, they're actually like, wait a minute, this part doesn't make sense. Why have we always done it this way? And so what I've seen is this actually creates
Mhm.
more conversation about how to improve that process or completely move to something else. And having the team along for the ride is that critical point. So that would be the number one thing I would recommend is get your team aligned to what your vision is and bake it
Yeah.
into the sandwich model.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The fascinating thing about this whole AI thing, like you said before, is that side note, I've been working with a company called MindStudio.ai. I'm one of their ambassadors. And so they have some use cases in some massive companies. And I've asked them to try to line out like in the massive in the massive organizations you're working in, what are the templates? What are the common use cases? And so I chatted with a couple of them and they were saying like, it's mostly like for that company specifically, they call it like the duct tape. It's like, you can use it in so many ways. It's not like one way to use duct tape. There's lots of ways to use duct tape. And it's the combination of all the little things that gets fixed that makes the whole stick together,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. And so I think this world of, and it kind of goes back to your thing around where do you even start, and that's why I think the sandwich models is fascinating because you can give that type of tech ability, power, whatever you want to call it, to users and let them figure out how to automate emails or how to automate the meeting stuff or notes or whatever. And even get them 10% better across the entire team of everyone do that is a massive difference. Just that. And that's not like what's it called? Like a huge change management thing. It's just saying, let me teach you some basics of prompting.
Yep.
Use this in this context. That one thing gets you 10%, which I think people overlook. They want to see these massive dramatic changes. You're like, you don't need that much to see change. You know what I mean? Did you feel the same way or what'd you see?
Yeah, exactly. The way that I talk to people about this and what I've seen work with real leaders implementing AI is they set a clear vision for what they want to achieve and they tie a goal to it that's not a 500% increase in pipeline in 3 months. They actually set
Yeah.
a realistic goal, something like, how can we improve this by 10%? Or what does this look like if we're more efficient? How can we reduce time to market? How can we increase productivity? And so what you're
Mhm.
saying is a really smart idea because what you want is people to be able to believe that it's possible. There's this concept, it's called the human action model. And for things to change, people have to believe that there's a problem worth solving. It has to cause them pain. They have to believe that the problem that is actually solvable. And then they also have to believe that it's going to get done, essentially. And if they don't
Yeah.
have all three of those things, it's not going to happen. So what you're saying is, hey, let's give them a goal, and that's the right way to do it. And let's work towards that, but make it reasonable.
Do you going into that? I'm asking about use cases and just listening to you talking together, but you probably identified some. So did you ask questions around what are the ways people are using it? And if so, what was the top stuff you heard?
So when talking to leaders, you're going to laugh, but the stuff that works, the people having the most success with, it's the most boring stuff. It's how do we get data from our Slack channel about customer insights into Salesforce? Do you know how much time that's saving them
Takes a
though?
lot. Yeah.
Hours. One of the most interesting use cases I saw related to that was the ability to take a comprehensive view of a customer for expansion opportunity while having really bad data in Salesforce. And I know bad data. It
Oh
can
yeah.
be the crux of any go-to-market process, right? And this company was in that same position. And so they actually used a combination of their Salesforce instance, as well as using deep research and created these dashboards to create an expansion initiative
Mm.
pilot program for 40 accounts that were strategic to them, but were empty. They couldn't fully blueprint. And they were able to do this. And the best thing about it was one, the VP of customer success estimated they probably saved 20 hours a week, which was critical for them because that's 20 hours a week per rep. I don't know, like for 20, it was 40 accounts. So I think it was like 4 reps. So that's a significant amount of time. But the other thing that they said was it was actually giving them a view on something they never would have been able to do anyway, because there's no way
Right.
that anyone would have ever said these reps could go off and do research for 20 hours. It's pretty powerful, but that's not, building the most comprehensive marketing campaign or creating the best outreach cadence. That's boring data up stuff, but
Yeah.
that's the stuff that's working.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's crazy is like, like momentum, the main bread and butter of what we do is in CRM data entry. So it's like let's take the calls, which is actually more difficult than you would think, but it's basically the basics of saying, listen to the call, make
Yeah.
sure we can analyze what was actually said. Of the things that were actually said, let's slice and dice and make sure it gets attached to the right opportunity and all the fields you have to fill out. Like it's more complicated than that, but the simplicity is just like saying we're taking data from here, putting in here, so the sales rep doesn't have to do it. That's
Yeah.
it. And there's tons of other things we do on top of that, but that's one of the main core use cases. And it's insane how powerful that one thing is. Like you said, it's like taking a Slack channel and summarizing it. It's the little stuff that people have to do that no one likes to do, but you have to do because you have to do the communication. It's like insane how many parts of our day are filled with that. For example, 2 years ago, I was remember thinking to myself, I was doing some automations And I started to do one thing at a time and saying, okay, I'm going to automate blogs and automate the newsletter and automate all these things. And by the time I got done, I was like, I have so much time now that I can just think about the things that I have. I use AI as a thought partner, but I had the space to actually think through and have time to do things I didn't have before, which is so nice now because now I'm more exhausted through the day now, but it's because I'm spending more time in deep thinking stuff. So is that, tell me if I'm wrong. Do you see that kind of thing in research too? That kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's super interesting you brought this up. So this is definitely what I would say cutting edge research, stuff that's just being done right now. But
Yeah.
what researchers are finding is that people who use AI a ton are actually dealing with a type of fatigue we haven't really seen before. During COVID, we talked about Zoom fatigue, but it's this fatigue of being able to do a lot, right? You're able to have 5 conversations with ChatGPT, have deep research done, talk about 5 different business ideas, probably do a go to market. You're able to do a lot of stuff, but that
All
actually
of
is quite draining. And so one of the things that is being talked about is like, what does self-regulation or balance look like? Because teams who are implementing AI are actually talking about this overwhelm and fatigue they're experiencing. So this is a real problem. It's really early on the research, but I will say I've experienced the same thing. Like I'll be working on something and I'll be using AI and it'll be like 2 hours later and I'm spent. Like because you're doing such deep thinking and it's like having a really deep conversation with a human for 2 hours. It takes energy. There's a tax to it. So it's something we got to be
yeah.
mindful of. And I do think, going back to what we're talking about, we're talking about AI, but we're talking about change management. There's a people aspect to this, and having your humans in a place that can use AI and benefit from it, but not burn out is critical. Because I hope we're moving past the idea that AI is going to replace all our jobs. If you've used ChatGPT 5, you will know that it's not going to anytime soon.
No, and everyone's freaking out about it like 2 months ago. Oh, I'm giving a job, AJ. I'm like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not even close. Yeah.
No, it's going to change. So,
It will. It will. I think it will change. And I think I have heard of several teams actually where I think I'm going to back up a second. It has taken jobs, but I think the challenge is like for enablement specifically, if an enablement professional, all they're doing is summarizing meetings, making decks, like all the things that I don't think is enablement, but a lot of people in enablement are doing,
yeah.
you'll be replaced now because like the AI can do things now without you.
Yeah.
However, if you're doing things at the core of what's supposed to be done, it's kind of like marketing. I have a team now in marketing where I have designers because AI is not a good designer. Like it's good with something, but it's not to the point of brand designers. And I have a writer, but that writer is editing 20 articles a day instead of writing 1 article a day. So
Yep.
I'm producing AI a ton of stuff, but then I use the human to make sure it reads well, it's okay. There's no M dashes, like all this other random stuff. So it can have the good content. So to me, like I feel like there is this danger of jobs being replaced, but there's still this fact of saying it's more about the amplifying the genius of whatever human you're working with. That's where the true power is, personally, I think. What do you
Yeah.
think?
No, I think you're spot on. What I would say is you're right. Jobs are going to be lost because of AI, but it's jobs that were low paying and not critical jobs, or the parts of the jobs. You mentioned, an enablement, note taking. That's
Correct.
something that a lot of people at many levels end up doing. They're not going to have to do it like that anymore. And so they're going to have more time to do exactly what you said, critically think, develop new strategies, maybe work more closely with other teams, learn something new. I don't, there's so many more things that they're
Whatever.
going to be able to do. And so it is going to change the dynamics of jobs, but there will be new jobs created as well. Just like the internet, just like the industrial revolution. The one I was reading actually about was when they built the line that went through the Atlantic to get the telephone through to
On a
the
teleboat.
UK to here. All these
Yep.
jobs were lost because just things changed, but this whole new world opened up. And so I would say, trying to lean into this more than seeing it as a huge disruptor. But I do think if you don't learn AI, whether you're a leader or you're, a manager or an associate, is
Mhm.
risky for anyone.
So we mentioned this before the call, but the study on MIT about brain rot. So
Yeah.
first, just know I have a lot of issues with this, but I'm just curious, not only from your research, but what are your thoughts on what's happening as a result of AI? Is it the case of the calculator where it's not thinking math, or is it really because you think there is some sort of brain rot because now we're going to not use the parts of our brain we used to have to because AI is now doing it all? What do you think?
This just reminds me of the Wikipedia issue, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Wikipedia was still a new source and people were like, I just Wikipedia'd it and here's the answer. There's always going to be people who that's just their
Yeah.
natural flow. But what I could say though is it's easy to go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and do some pretty good analysis and put a little bit of finishing
Right.
touch on it and say it's done and not really think about it. But that's just something we're gonna have to ask more from people. We're gonna have to ask people to critically think. I have, however, as a manager of people, gotten something and been like, "Did you read this before you gave it to me?" Like, because, and this is before AI. So
Yes.
these are things that
Yes.
already happened. I don't actually believe that. I mean, there could be some sort of like brain rot that occurs if you used it, but ChatGPT is too new. I do worry more about this overusing it and burning out is more than any sort of brain rot. And also that study, there's a lot of issues with that study. It's a little, it was a little headliney for me.
Yeah, it's like when I read, and someone tagged me and I first read it and I read it to him, wait a second, this has so many issues. Shame on you, MIT, for marketing this, because
Yeah.
this is not, in my
Yeah.
opinion, it's not worthy of an MIT level. But
Yeah.
anyways, tell me this. If people want to, I don't want to let you go first before everyone tunes out. Like, where do people find you, the research? Tell me where they can get connected with you.
Yeah, the best way to stay in touch with me is to follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn,
Cool.
Ken Roden. And I would love to talk to anyone about AI right now because there's just so much happening. And that's where I'm going to be publishing my research as I go through the next 3 years at these different stages. And also listen to Futurecraft Go to Market, new episodes every Thursday. And yeah, just thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man, I love it. Let me this now ask this the last question,
Okay.
which I like to ask guests, which is basically besides the main three, ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, what is your AI tool of choice?
That's a really good one. I'm a GenSpark guy.
Oh,
I'm
I forget about
obsessed.
GenSpark. I love
I think
GenSpark
you
so
got
much.
me on it, and it is like my best friend.
Yeah.
If I wanted to go a little more niche, I would say I use Opus Pro a lot for
Mhm.
video creation, and I
Mhm.
find that it's really fun. It's like a fun tool to play with, and I don't know, it's a little bit of a I don't know if you like videos. It's cool. It's cool for
No, I
podcast.
love it. I love Opus. Have you done anything with Notebook yet? Notebook LM?
Notebook LLM, I started creating some YouTube videos from that,
Nice.
and that's been really cool. And Gemini has actually really impressed me, like what they've done. I'm not really using ChatGPT much anymore. I'm
You
kind
know,
of
ever since GPT-5, like I find myself using other tools more because I'm just like, number one, I don't like not having control of the model.
yeah.
Which they still give you a little more control now, but still, I just haven't liked it as much. I don't know why, but it's just, I don't
Okay.
know what happened. But
Really funny you say that. So there's a whole study on this too. And what has been found is that the answers are actually weaker. You're getting worse answers, and what people are calling gr- gronking. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like it's just
oh yeah,
easy, shorter answers. And what the reason why is ChatGPT is trying to make themselves appeal to a general audience. And so an audience who doesn't want to fine tune, who doesn't want the control that you or I might want in our processes, they're trying to become more of a GA tool for a regular consumer. And so you as a, you know, go to market expert, you're like, what the heck is going on? So it's not you, it's them.
oh I know it's them. That's why I was just like, I gave it a good try. Like coding, it does a lot better. I still
Yeah.
prefer Claude for coding, even though it does better.
Yeah.
There's just so many things. I'm like, I just you have this. I think the biggest problem was there was so much hype. I was so excited. I got access to it really fast. I played with it all night, and after all night playing with it, I'm like, I don't like this. Like
Yeah.
I tried to force myself to like it. I was like, I don't like it.
So,
For some things,
yeah.
okay, but yeah,
Well, and I think the other interesting thing is what I really startled me about it is, they really pushed the agent aspect of her. And so I tried to use it for some things that I actually have workflows built in relevance and leverage. But I ran it and the output was so wrong, but I couldn't go back and figure out where it went wrong because you
yeah,
had
it's in a black box, right? Yeah.
all the nodes are all the nodes are done in a black box. And so I was just thinking from an adoption standpoint, if I'm a leader, my team is not going to trust the output and I'm not going to stand behind the output either. But the one thing I will say that's really cool about it is the conversational history, it's able to go really far back. So you can, if you're looking for something or if you want to understand your perception of something over time, that's actually been pretty cool for me in
I
things like
agree.
my doctoral research. It's good to see the evolution that I've taken.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see how they handle it, 'cause I know they've already made changes after the big blowback they had from the first launch, so it wouldn't surprise me if they start making the more people have been on it for 2 years, like myself and you, is, "Okay, give me back what I had before, and let the general audience have the general audience version, but give me what I want," you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going that route, but, I think it'll be interesting to see where they go, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And they're sitting on a lot of great insight, right? Like it's what technically what
yeah,
Copilot is kind of based on. And so I'm sure they could
right.
do something great, but I think it's really fun to see some of these other players kind of shine right now.
Yeah. What do you think? Tell me one thing with GenSpark, and I'll let you go. What's your favorite thing doing with GenSpark?
Creating slide templates. So I don't have a design team.
Oh, yeah.
And so
So awesome.
I'll upload my logo that I created in Canva and I'll be like, hey, create not slides, but the templates of the slides so that I just have a portfolio of templates that I never could create. I couldn't make that in template, in Canva or something. I don't have this design skill set. So I've got like 144 slides that I can now pull from that to
Great.
play data or, do different diagrams or,
Whatever.
yeah, but it's pretty powerful. What about you?
GenSpark, I use it
Yeah.
mostly for slides, but I actually have it make templates for me. Like I train it through designs, but I don't use it as my final thing. I hand it over to my design team and they can
Yeah.
whip out things fast because they have both the visuals and the content. And they just zip through and make me really
That's
good
great.
design stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So from that view, it's great. I've been messing with the video editor and then I'm using it with the voice and the sheets are kind of on and on, whatever. The deep research is pretty rad, but usually most of my use cases in GenSpark is the slides. But
Yeah.
it's what I love about it is that it can do this deep research type function, but then visualize it on the slide deck, it's just so freaking cool. I love that
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it brings something to life. It's
Yeah.
what's been interesting about GenSpark specifically is so they don't have a security policy that they have a security policy on their website. Their security policy would not be what you and I would define as a security policy. They're not SOC
Mhm.
2 certified. They don't have a transparency on how your data is used, but they're really pushing you to connect your G Suite to your instance. And I've actually been talking to them about, hey, well, I'll do it once you have a little bit more transparency about your privacy policy. But I'm curious, like, how do you feel about connecting your Google Drive, not to a single file, but actually just carte blanche to your Drive and your Gmail to one of these guys?
I don't.
Yeah.
Again, I want to control it. I've seen some this comes down to the jailbreak type use cases where I've heard too many stories about AI when it's threatened with its existence, not that I ever threatened it, but if it ever did, it reaches into content and pulls it back out and says, "Hey, I found this content from your wife about whatever." It's like, I don't like that it has that ability still.
Yeah.
So because of that, I've chosen not to connect to different things because I want to
Yeah.
control when I put a document in and it's just gonna have to just deal with it. So I'm kind of similar. For example, I don't have Amazon, the voice
Alexa.
thing.
Yeah.
I've never had Alexa. There's some things I'm like, I'm keeping a little bit of hands. I want control or how AI tech enables me or it gets to my life. I don't want having access to things if I'm not like typing it
Yeah.
myself.
So,
That's just me.
oh, I'm the same way. Actually, I talked to a security guy, and he's he's on one side of the spectrum. You and I are probably not as far, on it that as
Right.
he is. But one of the things he said was like, "Hey, like on Instagram or even on ChatGPT, you can give it access to your photos. Don't do that. Only give it select access because it will at some point. Like Facebook actually just said they're going to do this. Is they're going to be able to access all your photos." Give them permission. And I'm like, no. So that's privacy is actually going to become more important. I think 2026 with AI is going to be about privacy
I totally
because
agree.
something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen in the next. I'm going to call right now. It's what we're in August. I think something's going to happen in the next 4 months. Hopefully not too.
I would 3000% agree with you only because and I think outside of AI, the privacy thing is a big deal anyways, but because of AI and like data being trained and like there's value inside of data. Like I even had this idea of a product of where you could opt in your data of some kind that a company could buy. And so you could monetize your data that you volunteer to do, like this world of data and having AI that like needs good data instead of just synthetic data is like a fascinating
Yeah.
world. So
Data
yeah.
privacy. You're right. That's going to interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Make it valuable.
Well, my man, I love talking to you. Like, I can't wait for it. I'll make sure I'll have all your links and the podcast notes. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much. Like, I love geeking out with you. And anytime you have stuff, come talk to me. I'll blast it. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is great. Talk to you later.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.